Welcome to Fear Machine, where the shadows come alive and your deepest fears take root. Tonight, we venture into the heart of the unknown, a wilderness that breathes, watches, and waits. Imagine this. 6 strangers, lured by the promise of adventure and wealth, step into a forest older than time itself. But Blackwater Pines is no ordinary woodland. Its ancient trees whisper secrets, its shadows hold memories, and its paths twist into traps. What begins as a test of survival spirals into a nightmare as the group unravels a chilling truth. This forest has a hunger that no one can escape. Will they outlast the darkness, or will they become part of the legend? Stay with us as we uncover the terrifying mystery behind shadows in the wilderness. Dare you continue? The first night in the wilderness was uneventful, aside from the occasional rustling of leaves and distant animal calls. Rory had given them minimal supplies: a map, a compass, and a handful of tools. The task was simple: follow the marked trail to a rendezvous point in 5 days. But the woods had other plans. By morning, the map had changed. The trail they had followed the previous day seemed to vanish, replaced by dense undergrowth. Clara joked, "Maybe the trees are alive and playing tricks on us." But the humor was short-lived when they discovered a crude carving on one of the trees. "Turn back," Julian scoffed. "Someone's trying to scare us." But Ethan examined the carving closely. It was deep and old, the edges of the letters gnarled, as if the bark itself had grown around them. The further they walked, the heavier the air became. The forest seemed darker, even during the day, and the sounds of birds and insects grew distant. Whispers began to echo, faint but chilling, as if the trees themselves were murmuring secrets. By the second day, tensions were high. The group's compass spun wildly, and the rendezvous point seemed to move further away. Food and water dwindled faster than expected. Rory was nowhere to be found. That night, the group set up camp in a clearing. The firelight cast long shadows on the trees, making them appear like twisted figures reaching out. As they tried to rest, a faint, melodic humming drifted through the air. Clara was the first to notice. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Ethan nodded. "Stay close to the fire." The humming grew louder, accompanied by soft footsteps crunching the leaves. Regina stood abruptly, clutching a flashlight. "This is ridiculous. I'm going to see who's out there." Before anyone could stop her, she disappeared into the darkness. Minutes passed, then an hour. When Regina finally returned, her face was pale and her hands trembled. "I saw something," she stammered, unable to explain further. By the third day, paranoia gripped the group. Clara swore she saw a figure darting between the trees, but every time they investigated, they found nothing. The whispers became louder, more distinct, speaking in an unfamiliar language. That evening, Tommy vanished. The group searched desperately, shouting his name until their voices were hoarse. As darkness fell, they found his flashlight near the edge of a ravine, flickering weakly. Beside it was another carving in the dirt. "Leave now," Sophia sobbed, clutching the flashlight as if it were the boy himself. Ethan tried to reassure her, but his own composure was cracking. Julian insisted they keep moving, but the group was too exhausted to continue. On the 4th day, the forest revealed its true nature. They stumbled upon a clearing filled with strange, crude totems made of bone and twine. The air was suffocating, and an unnatural silence blanketed the area. "Is this some sick prank?" Julian demanded, kicking one of the totems. The moment he did, the ground beneath them rumbled. A piercing scream erupted from the forest, and shadows began to move in the periphery of their vision. They ran, tripping over roots and branches, until they found themselves back at the clearing. The totems were now arranged in a perfect circle, and in the center was Tommy's jacket, soaked in blood. Sophia collapsed to her knees, while Ethan shouted, "We have to stick together!" But it was too late. The group had lost faith in each other. By the 5th day, the group was reduced to Clara, Ethan, and Sophia. Julian had wandered off during the night, and Regina was found hanging from a tree, her face frozen in terror. Clara began piecing together the carvings they had seen, warnings left by previous victims. "This isn't a retreat. It's a trap," she whispered. Ethan nodded grimly. The forest is feeding off us. It wants us to turn on each other. They devised a plan to head west, following the sun, but the forest seemed to shift around them. Paths closed off, trees loomed closer, and the whispers turned into screams. On the final night, Clara awoke to find Ethan missing. Sophia sat by the dying fire, staring blankly into the flames. "You want to find a way out," she murmured, but Clara knew better. Ethan wouldn't abandon them. She ventured into the woods, clutching a makeshift torch. The forest seemed alive, its branches clawing at her, its roots tripping her. She found Ethan in a clearing, standing before a massive, ancient tree with a face carved into its trunk. The whispers emanated from the tree, calling her name. Ethan turned to her, his eyes hollow. "It demands a sacrifice," he said, his voice monotone. Clara screamed as the tree's roots lashed out, dragging her toward its gaping maw. When authorities found the campsite weeks later, they discovered the remains of a crude ritual. The totems had been burned, and the ancient tree stood untouched, its bark now etched with 6 new names. The forest ranger who led the search team refused to speak of what he saw that day, but whispers persisted among the locals. Blackwater Pines was alive, feeding on those foolish enough to enter. To this day, the humming can still be heard, warning those who dare to listen. Leave now, or join us forever. The story of Blackwater Pines doesn't end with those 6 souls. The forest's whispers persist, its hunger unquenched, its shadows waiting. Travelers claim to hear the humming, feel the eyes, and see the totems, though no one admits to staying long enough to know the truth. But the question remains, what would you do? Could you resist the call of the forest? Or would curiosity drag you into its roots, like so many before you? Here on Fear Machine, we explore the stories that linger in the darkest corners of our imagination. But beware, the line between fiction and reality is thinner than you think. If you enjoyed tonight's descent into terror, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time, where fear becomes your only companion. Until then, remember, not all trails lead to safety. Some lead to shadows.